Hello, everybody. My name is James Love with the Savanna Group. I'm here today to present to you the methods of our monitoring protocol for this study. Altogether, we've been granted access to 1,000 acres of land here in Northern California in some prime black and white oak habitat. Of that 1,000 acres, 1/10 or 100 is going to serve as our control. We're not going to introduce any disturbance into it, and we will suppress any natural disturbance such as a lightning caused wildfire as quickly as possible. Of the remaining 900 acres, we would have liked to have split it evenly between prescribed fire and prescribed fire with mechanical treatments and prescribed fire with grazing. However, due to the intrinsic costs of mechanical treatments, that the number that we were able to accomplish is much lower. Therefore, we're also going to have 1/10 of the total acreage, or 100 acres, that will receive prescribed fire and mechanical treatments. Of the remaining 800 acres, it will be evenly split, as one will only receive prescribed fire and the other one will receive prescribed fire with cattle grazing. To conduct our monitoring program, we will conduct an initial monitoring over the entirety of the management area. After we establish our initial monitoring data, we will be conducting biennial monitoring for the first 6 years. After the first 6 years, monitoring will move to 5-year frequency. During those first 6 years, monitoring will not be required in the control unit. Also, during those first 6 years, we will be introducing our fire in between our monitoring. So if our initial monitoring would be 0, we will introduce fire in year 1, conduct our first biennial monitor in year 2, and so on until we hit first 6 years. So the entirety of the area, except for the control, will receive 3 fires and 3 post-fire monitoring inventories. How we'll be conducting this sampling will be using simple random samples that will be generated throughout the management area equal to 15% of the total acreage. Now, when I say throughout the entire management area, we're going to be breaking that down for each disturbance regime. So we will have 15% of the 400 acres that receives only prescribed fire. We'll have 15% of the total acreage that receives prescribed fire and cattle grazing, and we'll have 15% of the 100 acres that will receive prescribed fire in addition to mechanical treatments. We'll also cover 15% of the control. However, those will not be re-inventoried until the end of our 6 years. Our simple random samples will generate points throughout our project area. For each point, the latitude and longitude will be recorded where a piece of rebar is driven into the ground as our center marker. That way, those same points can be utilized for future inventories within the first 6 years to monitor habitat responses to our disturbances. After the first 6 years, to monitor disturbance effects, new simple random samples will be randomly generated throughout the project area and will be regenerated every 5th year. So this is an example of what our simple random sample plots will look like. We'll be pounding the piece of rebar into the ground at our center point, stringing a 50-foot tape measure around, giving us a 100-foot diameter circle. Within that circle, we'll be inventorying tree species, the diameter at breast height, and the overall height. We'll also be inventorying our stand condition and our composition. Now within that 100-foot circle, we'll be generating 5 random sample plots of 3-foot diameter circles. Within those plots, we'll be specifically looking at our grasses and forbs and our mid-story species. We want to know our species and abundance of our ground cover. We also want to know species abundance and the overall size of our mid-story wooded plants and shrubs. Also within these 3-foot circles, we will be examining our fuel loads